Walter Judd and the Medical Missionaries. Walter Judd has been dead some 10 or 15 years, a physician congressman who was gerrymandered out of his Twin Cities congressional district before his death, having served his constituency many years in Congress. He was one of those rare figures we associate with principles and values, but he was also identified with the infamous reactionary Chiang Kai-shek China lobby. I suppose there were 30 years after I met him as a youth that I never thought again of Dr. Judd until I arrived in Minnesota. There one day I recognized his picture in the newspaper, his face unforgettable, like a death mask. His skin, severely damaged by acne and irradiation, was drawn over a sharp nose, cheekbones, and chin. Dr. Judd was family practitioner and a general surgeon for many years, and then became a medical missionary in China. I can pinpoint the year I met him as 1940, plus or minus a year. Certainly it was before Pearl Harbor, because I remember that he predicted the war with Japan and rang the alarm long before the Japanese air attack on Pearl Harbor. It seems to me now that he and other missionaries of my father's generation had a particularly clear view of the world. They had seen it in the raw, with all the social dilemmas and physical disasters of peoples to whom they administered and with whom they dwelt so long and intimately. They saw closely the tyranny and corruption of regimes that our country either embraced or ignored. William Hewlett and Dennis Burkitt, as other examples, saw clearly the origins of Western diseases by their absence under the lifestyles of developing countries compared to those of the American and British colonials there. Walter Judd saw firsthand the Chinese victims of the Sino-Japanese War. His messages during a tour around the country during home leave, to which my father had opened his church in Florida, was a simple one. You people are responding to the government's call for scrap iron. The government is selling it to the Japanese. I am digging that scrap iron out of the flesh of the Chinese. It's madness. The Japanese are beating our plowshares into their swords and decimating China in a holy war on the Asian continent. The Japanese military has run wild. The gentle emperor and his people are their captives. This madness will soon all be turned against us. Stop those scrap iron shipments. Stop the slaughter. Mobilize against the Japanese invaders. He was precisely prescient. Several of this generation of missionaries touched my life. Walter Judd surely with his predictions of war and his sharp definition of tyranny, but also Ira Barnett with his subtle sensitivity, his exquisite Japanese brush drawings that spoke of Christian love transcendent. William Hewlett, who recounted back when I was just a freshman in medical school that he had never seen a single case in 20 years in the Belgian Congo of appendicitis, of diverticulitis, of tonsillitis, or of heart attack. It was he who first put in my mind the idea that the causes of modern Western diseases lay in mass behavior, and perhaps also in the diet. Garfield Evans introduced me directly to the brutality of a dictatorship in Batista, Cuba. Instead of challenging me to a medical mission in that lawless, superstitious, and cynical culture, the experience sent me running with the strong conviction that what such peoples needed, I couldn't provide. Freedom from oppression, good education, sanitation, jobs, under which improved conditions I suspected that most of their diseases would disappear. Medical care by missionaries in such lands, I came to think, was only a drop in the bucket for their thirst and a false promise of salvation. Finally, there was Dennis Burkitt, not a missionary, but who served nevertheless as a British physician to the people of Uganda and Kenya. He independently developed a theory of the evolutionary origin of mass modern disease as maladaptations due to discordance between hunter-gatherer legacy and our modern lifestyle. I learned something from each of these superior men and from their pleasant, sensitive, and forbearing wives. I thank them all, particularly for the attitudes they taught, without knowing that they taught them.